Some breaking news for you at the very top of the show. Deputy PM Angela Rayner has resigned from her post over failing to pay enough stamp duty on the flat that she bought in Hove. She's faced mounting pressure to stand down over recent days and even referred herself to the independent advisor on ministerial standards. She bought the £800,000 property in Hove in May, and it was then reported that she paid £40,000 less in stamp duty on the flat than she should have done if it were considered to be her second home because of a situation with the trust set up to take care of her disabled son. So do you think she did the right thing in resigning? Let's start with you, Rebecca.
Oh, I feel so conflicted about this because I do feel if she'd been a man, we would have been far more sympathetic to how busy she is. I mean, it's an incredibly difficult job and she's got so much going on at home with her disabled son. I really do believe that. I mean, look at Farage. He's been talked back from this £90 billion tax saving that he said he was going to have if he was brought in as the next party in charge. And now he's got a new government minister coming in that's saying, actually, we can't achieve that.
I'm not sure that is a viable comparison in any way at all. He may have made a promise. That's what manifestos are all about. But that's not the same as deliberately evading tax, which is the mistake that Angela Rayner says is a mistake, but has apologised for. It's not as if she denies doing it or having done it. She has done it. That's not the same thing.
She has done it, but did she do it on purpose? I don't think she did do it deliberately. I think she sought counsel. I wouldn't necessarily know, having bought and sold a house.
Except the news story today, of course, is that the lawyers that she consulted said, A, they're not tax lawyers and didn't give her any tax advice, and B, all they did was basically put into the equation the information that she supplied them with. And that is exactly how it works. You consult a lawyer, you might consult an accountant, but you don't have to do what they suggest. And if you don't necessarily provide them with the right information, they can't give you the right advice.
But I feel like somebody surrounding her has given her bad advice. I do feel this is a clerical error. I don't think she can stay in the position she's in because when the story becomes about the politician rather than the policies, you can't stay in it. But would we be more forgiving of her if she was a man with this busy job, this busy life, and trying to make the best situation for her son?
I'm not sure if you can be forgiving of tax evasion, which, let's face it, is against the law, whatever your motivation.
But what if it's a mistake? What if it's a genuine mistake?
But you try saying that when you're speeding on the road or when you go through a speed camera. You say it was a mistake. I didn't mean to. I didn't know I was driving at 23. I thought I was at 20. It's a mistake, but you pay the penalty for it.
But she's done everything she possibly can do afterwards. She's referred herself to all the bodies that she should
only after
do.
being extensively investigated by the Telegraph, which devoted a really bang-up team to unearthing this story and also trying to style it out for quite considerable time and blustering about not having done anything wrong. When finally banged to rights, then she finally did resign, but only because presumably this a report by Sir Laurie Magnus must be so damning. What do you think, Sarah Jane?
I just think, when it comes to tax and you're dealing with HMRC, there's always grey areas and nuance. But if you're in that position, ex-property minister, deputy prime minister, why, there's no way that you should take a risk like that and err on the side of paying less tax. And if she's been economical with the truth when supplying the lawyer with information, they're not going to be able to give her the right information. She's not going to get the right advice. I'm not saying she did it on purpose, but for me personally, you're going to have to hold yourself to such a high standard if that's the position that you're in.
But there's nothing
to save 40 grand. I just think she did the right thing resigning. Absolutely, you can't stay in that position.
Quite, because this isn't very complicated. I mean, I wouldn't claim to be a tax specialist. Good Lord, absolutely not. But essentially, if the property was your second home, you would have had to pay £70,000 of stamp duty. If it was your first home, you would only have to pay £30,000, saving £40,000. I think everybody watching this, listening to this, can understand that. So is it your first home or is it your second home? It's not really very difficult.
She thought there was a loophole, didn't she? Because she thought that she'd gotten rid of her bit of the trust. There's a house that's there for her son, and she thought that in her divorce she got rid of her share. But the guidance says that even if that's the case, if you've got a minor that's going to benefit from this property, you still have to pay the high rate of tax because it's classed as a first home.
And also, was she ever intending to live in Hove permanently when her constituency is near Ashton under Lyme? She's got a beautiful Grace and Favour apartment, which is meant to be absolutely majestic in Whitehall. What time was she really thinking of spending in Hove? Who knows? I've no idea. But it didn't look like her first home, or that she could possibly have thought it was either. What do you think, Marvyn?
Well, I think it's the right thing that she's resigned based on all the information resignation that we've now received is the right thing to do. It's a shame for me still, right? And necessarily not based on what it is, just on what she represented. And I think a lot of working class women were looking at her as a benchmark for what they could achieve and how to navigate a very difficult world, which is basically public life. I think the other really difficult part is you're right, there is an element of being an upper class male would have allowed you to navigate this differently. And we've seen what's happened with the Conservative Party over the last 15 years. A number of them have gone under investigation for their behaviour, but also been protected, right? But the Labour Party have said that we are going to do things differently under that and the policies that they've put in place, which we're all abiding by, which is squeezing the belts of all of us. She cannot stay. I think it's too overwhelming for her to maintain, and I think it's great that she's resigned, and I think we now need to move forward because we are constantly being blindsided and moving away from real issues that are impacting families every day because we're looking into the noise around politicians rather than actual policy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Paul on the line in Merseyside. Hello, Paul. When you look at this picture, what do you see?
Well, what I see is that nothing Angela Rayner has said about this matter is at all credible. She claims to have had the wrong advice from 3 different sources, which is remarkable enough in itself. But one of those sources, which is the conveyancing solicitors, have said they don't give tax advice. So who is or isn't telling the truth about this? And on another level, as housing minister, she apparently didn't know the difference between ownership and residency, which is like the Minister of Defence not knowing the difference between the Army and the Navy. So it's a whole, she was right to go.
What do you think of what Marvyn said, Paul, about the fact that it's such a distraction from the very serious business indeed of governing this country and working towards, as the Labour Party, the government keeps telling us, a better Britain, a better life for the working man and woman. And instead, all of us focusing on this flat in Hove. I mean, it is a waste of all our time in a way, isn't it?
Well, whatever happens in any context, there's always something worse. You can't just make this a standard blanket excuse. Oh, well, don't criticise me for what I've done because, such and such a body has done something that's worse than that. It's not acceptable as a blanket excuse.
Paul, thank you so much. Well, the letter from Angela Rayner to the Prime Minister has just been published, and this is what it says. Given the findings and the impact on my family, I've decided to resign as Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, as well as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. She says she deeply regrets her decision not to seek additional specialist tax advice, and she takes full responsibility for this error. She adds, for a teenage mum from a council estate in Stockport to serve at the highest level of government has been the honour of my life. Let's go straight to Dean in Pembrokeshire. Dean, how do you feel about this one? I think you can identify to some extent.
Oh, hello, Vanessa. Hello, panel.
Hiya, Dean. Tell us how come you can sort of empathise with this.
I only rang in, Vanessa, please, and what Marvyn says, I watch your show all the time. It's brilliant. After I come in off nights, it's brilliant.
Thank you.
And but yeah, we were in a similar position, Vanessa. I own properties and public houses and Airbnb things.
Right.
We had very similar disinformation from solicitors, but solicitors aren't really there to sort of give advice on what's happened to Mrs. Rayner, if that makes sense. Sorry.
But the information you were given, Dean, that wasn't correct, did you act on it or did you question it?
Yes, we did. We had to act. Where we live in Pembrokeshire, it's a tourist. I don't know whether you're familiar, Tenby. It's a very tourist town.
It's very beautiful. I do know it. Yes, and so
So we did act, but if we hadn't have acted, we might have been in the same sort of position. The bottom line with your call thing, sorry, Vanessa, is I do feel a bit sorry for her. Maybe she did try to do the right things. I'm not sure. Sorry.
All right, Dean, thank you very much. Let's go to Mick, who's in Leeds. Mick, you're thinking about the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and you're wondering why it was only yesterday around this time that he said, I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with my Deputy Prime Minister, and I'm very proud to, and she comes from a very difficult background and all that kind of a thing. Do you think he should have instead be thinking, all right, let's get rid of her immediately?
I do, Vanessa. You know, he should lead by example. This is tax evasion. It's simple tax law, and she should have known this. And Keir Starmer should have had the honesty and integrity to say, listen, put your hands up, admit it, and we'll just move on. Had she done that, she might have survived. But the fact that she prolonged it for several weeks and then tried to blame someone else for it is just unacceptable. And, you know, I might say, oh, it's a distraction. It's not. This is depriving the taxpayer of £40,000 that should be going to things like the NHS. So it's not a distraction. Taxpayers' money that is urgently needed at the current time, which is facing a financial crisis at the moment.
Tell me, Mick, when you look at Angela Rayner and her life story, she certainly hasn't had it easy, has she? She really hasn't. She came from a very difficult background. She's pregnant at 16. And then we now know that she had a very, severely disabled and very challenged child. She hasn't had a picnic of a life, has she? And she did achieve this exalted office. No one can say she didn't, of Deputy Prime Minister. Do you feel at all sorry for her? Do you think that, she's really had it rough?
Afraid not, Vanessa. We've got millions of people out there who are suffering, taxpayers who work hard,
yes,
who are having to use food banks, and they can't use that excuse for tax evasion. I'm sorry, but I've just got no remorse for it. It's just not acceptable.
Appreciate your call, Mick, very much indeed. Joining us on the show now, journalist Angela Epstein. I'm very interested indeed to get Angela's take on this. Angela, I tried to get Mick. I was trying to kind of suggest that maybe this is the moment to kick in with some compassion. He said absolutely not. He wouldn't even think of it. How do you feel about all of this?
Well, hi to you and to the panel. As a red-headed Angela from the north of England, from not quite as compromised circumstances as Angela Rayner, but very much, from simple circumstances. Had she been, the entrepreneur who'd said, I've come from a difficult background, I've raised myself up by my bootstraps and I've done this, and now I fess up, I got this completely wrong, hadn't let it go on for weeks and weeks, then I would have had a lot more sympathy for her. Remember at the 2021 Tory conference, she said about Nadine Zahawi, there seems to be one rule for the Tories and one rule for us. When his tax circumstances were put up for scrutiny.
Yes.
I think it was, every day ordinary people do due diligence over their tax affairs because this is hard-earned money, and they want to make sure they're doing things correctly so that they won't be penalised. For goodness sake, she did rise up to the office of Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Minister. And what's more, back in 2015, there was scrutiny over the purchase and the profit she made from selling a council house. Now, that complaint was not upheld, and there was no suggestions of any criminality there, as there isn't here. But the fact is that having been exposed to that kind of level of scrutiny, you'd think she would be all the more careful with such complex tax arrangements. She got it wrong. She blamed lawyers who were not accountable. She clearly didn't take the advice that she should have done and thought she could somehow wing it. And she has to pick up the slack for that. I mean, it's a shame because she could have been a role model on so many levels. But for somebody who was always screeching about the wealthy paying more taxes, what goes around comes around.
And final question for you, Angela. Sir Keir Starmer, how do you feel this reflects on him and the way that he has acted or failed to act so far?
I think it's another example of the fact that he is a weather-vane politician who blows around in whichever direction will serve him best. Had he been robust, had he had a core of steel, he would have said, for the good of the party, Angela, stand down, or at the very least, you're going to be suspended pending an inquiry, or be very clear about if there's any suggestion of wrongdoing or she breached the ministerial code, even if she fell only slightly short of high standards, she would have to go. But he doesn't. He doesn't know what he stands for. He's made some very poor decisions about the people around him, as witnessed by the fact he's had to introduce some economic heft into his inner circle just recently with the appointments last week, much to the chagrin of Rachel Reeves. I just think once again it shows that we have a very poor Prime Minister in place in office, and for another 3 years.
Angela Epstein, thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Angela. Well, we now know more about the findings of the Ethics Watchdog's report into Angela Rayner. It found that although she acted with integrity, she did breach the ministerial code. The report praised her for full and open cooperation in assisting me with my inquiries. This is Sir Laurie Magnus. He said that she breached the rules that govern the conduct of government ministers. He wrote, "It is highly unfortunate, however, that Ms Rayner failed to pay the correct rate of stamp duty on this purchase, particularly given her status and responsibilities as the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government and as Deputy Prime Minister." And he concluded, "I believe Ms Rayner has acted with integrity and with a dedicated and exemplary commitment to public service." We'll just get a quick response from the panel. What do you think?
What other adjectives would you want for your politician other than integrity, dedicated to public service? She feels like a loss at the moment going. Obviously, she can't stay as Housing Minister and Deputy Prime Minister with everything that she's done, but those adjectives to describe someone's integrity and personality is exactly the character you want as a politician, and I think she's a loss.
Let's bring in Marvyn.
Yeah, I think it's been really intensified, and I do feel like the right thing has happened. And what I mean by moving on is that when these things happen, it's important to make the point, be clear to everybody else to up your affairs, but also we do need to move on and get on with fixing this country. I just feel like some of the intense responses are more personal or more what she represents. And I think that's what comes back to your point about a working class woman mobilising herself through the country and also even trying to put a house in trust and to get a second home or whatever has gone on. That attempt, which has normally been done often within other parties, is not being framed correctly. So it's wrong, it's bad, it's happened, but let's really start fixing this country with real things. And it's not an indicator of a system, it's an indicator of an individual's mistake, which is being rectified.
Sarah Jane, one of the things that's been volleyed at Angela Rayner in a hail of criticism has been the pulling up of the ladder, which is the thing where you climb it yourself, in her case, with great dedication and against all odds, you might say, but then you pull it up so that other people can't do it. So when she made that heartfelt and sobbing interview on Sky with Beth Rigsby and said, I was only trying to do it for my children, everybody understands you want to secure the best future of your children, there were farmers all over the country thinking, hang on a minute, wait a minute, they've just really stuck it to us with this inheritance tax. And lots of other families thinking, hang on, is she going to come for my house? This suggested possible mansion tax. Is she going to come for my pension? Very moving piece in the Daily Mail today by Tom Utley saying until he gets the budget, he just doesn't know whether his pension will yield him enough money so that he can survive with his wife or not. That kind of a thing. This feeling that she got there. Well done, Angela. Excellent. Really amazing. But now give everyone else a chance, that feeling.
Yeah, I'm all for social mobility, and she is somebody usually that I would be praising. I don't like, though, that she used at the end of the letter, not bad for a girl from a council estate. It's like, well, OK, but you're the one that made this protracted, so that means that you're then going to have more resentment around you, and that's when it becomes heightened and distracting. If you'd have just admitted in the first place, or better yet, if you'd have done your due diligence, given the position that you're in. I don't like all of that, using that, because she knows, I think, that it's the one thing that is going to kind of get sympathy for her. I'm the number one, person who wants people to do well in social mobility, and, I'm going to be for the women, but I don't agree that use that in your swan song letter. I don't agree with that.
All right, let's go to Julia in the West Midlands. How are you feeling about this, Julia? Thanks for ringing.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
I spoke a few days ago about this. I thought I find it very sad that it's come to this. Right. I appreciate she made a mistake. She needs to pay for that. I don't believe it was cynically done, and I don't believe she would have had any sympathy had she put her hands up straight away. So I find that difficult to believe. They say now she's played the disabled card with her son. I think that's a dreadful thing to say. I grew up on a council estate, some of my childhood, not all of it, and I know how difficult that is, and I know how difficult it is to move forward in the sort of environment that she was probably in. Yes. So for her to say her personal circumstances and the way her life is, I don't agree that is hypocrisy. And when we go back to Owen Patterson, the scandal surrounding that, I believe it was often said, oh, he's just lost his wife. So there was quite a lot of sympathy around that. And I think it was a considerably higher sum of sum of money. I think it's something like £500,000 that was involved there. So I do think there's an element of misogyny here towards her, which we did see towards other female politicians like Nicola Sturgeon when she was in office.
But just checking, Julia, in this instance, you've got this remarkable situation where she is the Minister for Housing, and this is about housing. I mean, you don't get more of a kind of, clash of subjects than that, do you? She's at the helm. She's directing housing, and she's just bought this home in Hove and hasn't paid the right stamp duty. I mean, what can you do? I don't think it would make any difference really whether she was a woman or a man, or whether she came from a council estate or she came from a stately home. It's just the juxtaposition of those two things, isn't it, really?
Well, I do believe Keir Starmer had to wait for the report into it, and I do believe that she should have paid the extra tax and maybe a fine. I'm not saying she shouldn't have to do that, but the things that, when you look at the past history of things that have been said about her, other people don't have to endure that. It would make me want to go off and get on the sea down in Brighton or Hove, wherever she went, just to escape all of that noise around the fact that she's constantly scrutinised more than other people would be.
I believe, Julia, that she has access to the most exquisite Grace and Favour apartment in Whitehall. And when I say apartment, it's not 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. I mean, it's meant to be absolutely grand and, sweeping and wonderful. And she doesn't pay for that. That's Grace and Favour. And that's right in the heart of London. So if she wanted to escape scrutiny and have a little luxurious recline on a chaise longue, I think we're all making sure that she is furnished with that, to look at some exquisite art and out of some really magnificent windows at a beautiful view. I know she's not short of a place, to seek refuge in, I don't think. I think we're all providing her with that. But thank you so much. Lovely call. Let's go to Janice in Essex. Janice, how do you feel about this? Was she right to resign?
Yes, she was. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, panel. I actually really feel sorry for her right now.
Right.
Because she could have had the top job. And she's just lost it over something really stupid in housing. What I think's made it look worse is that she's in housing and she doesn't even understand stamp duty. Well, loads of people buy second homes. You can get someone to sort it out for you. Yeah. I get she's busy. She's trying to help run a country. But I do feel that she's going to spend a lot of time regretting what she's done. And it's not the first mistake she's made. And if it was the other side, she'd be paying for blood. But there is a part of me that does really feel sorry for her.
I mean, it's that dashed dreams thing, isn't it? When you see somebody, as you say, on the threshold, and so, so much support from the unions who really lionised her and adored her, so much support from the voters, actually, many of whom think she's absolutely magnificent. So I think Janice is right. When you see the kind of, that wonderful kind of, potential, and then you see it snuffed out. But it's a little bit like, you might say, Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, and then the Partygate absolute fiasco where he achieved great office and then bam. It's extraordinary, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It really reminds me of the expenses scandal that happened and politicians supposedly being better. And then it turns out that they're actually putting duck houses into the public coffers. So she should have done better. But I wish we were a bit more forgiving, I think.
Yeah, I think the tone has been definitely one that has got a little bit ugly in places, but I think overall the right thing has happened. I think what it is just feeling like we are a version of her in our own selves, coming from not very much, making something of yourself, and watching that be stripped away from them publicly is just hard. And I think maybe there's an emotional attachment to her more than the situation.
That slight feeling of there but for the grace of God, as everybody thinks, gosh, what mistakes have we made in all our lives? And on the other hand, we're not Deputy Prime Minister, are we? So it's a whole different ballgame.